Hey everyone, this is tarekith, and today we're going to talk about the new Ableton Push 2. I wasn't going to do a video on this, but everyone keeps asking me for it, so I'll take a few minutes here and do something quick. I hope you can bear with me. I am just getting over a cold right now. My throat's still a little raw, but I think we can make it through this without too many problems. So yeah, the new Push 2. I don't have my Push 1 handy to compare it direct side by side, but for the most part the layout's pretty much the same. Ableton considers this an instrument, so they're not going to drastically change it with each version, I imagine. There are some nice updates to the hardware, though. I thought the Push 1 itself was actually a really well-built controller, but Ableton's taken it up a whole nother level with the new one. I should point out, too, that the Push is not manufactured by Ableton. It's no longer manufactured by Akai, so some people were curious about that. As far as the hardware goes, there's now an aluminum top plate, anodized aluminum, so you shouldn't have problems with things like deck savers and whatnot rubbing off the rubber coating from before. The base is plastic, kind of the opposite of what the first Push was, and it does have that kind of rubberized coating on it, but it feels a little more durable, so hopefully that holds up better than it did on the last one. On the bottom of the unit, there's actually nice big wide rubber feet now. I'm not sure if you can see these. They're about 2 inches square. That's a huge improvement over the last version I found. It doesn't slide around quite as much, and it's easier to place on gear if you had to put it like on a turntable or something at a club. The other nice changes now, the buttons are all kind of recessed. They're mechanical buttons, but they have like kind of like a rubber coating over them, like a rubber membrane. It actually feels really nice. They feel nice. It's a more positive feeling click when you press on it. You definitely know you press the button. The only downside to that is that something like, for instance, the tap tempo button. I know there's been some complaints that people actually like the raised rubber from the first Push for tap tempo. If you're trying to tap in a specific tempo, it's easier to press. Supposedly, I'll be honest, I haven't had problems with it. I think it works fine. It's not that big a deal to me, but that is kind of one complaint some people had about Push 2 versus Push 1. That's more than made up for the fact that these new pads are amazing. They're much softer, they're lower profile, they're way more sensitive. Longtime readers of my blog will know that I had problems with the first Push 1. The colors on mine were terrible. Some people call it rainbow Push. Like the whites just didn't look white. They're all different shades. And mine, actually, my first Push was one of the worst ones I've ever seen as far as that goes. So the new pads are super consistent. That's awesome. The sensitivity is greatly improved, and you can dial in the sensitivity quite a bit more on this one than the last one I find. There are some changes to how aftertouch is handled, as far as you can't really dial in the aftertouch threshold, at least not yet. But I find the new pads are 10 times easier to play than the old one. On Push 1, it was a nice concept, but I just found my hands got sore after a while. Like those pads are really stiff. And these are much softer. And they also have kind of a matte texture now, which is really nice. They're not quite so slippery and sticky as the first Push. So, I mean, hands down, these pads are much, much better than Push 2. I was actually comparing it to my Machine Studio, and I actually prefer these over the Machine Studio pads, which is kind of saying a lot because those are my favorite for a long time now. So I think Ableton did a really, really nice job as far as that goes. You still have the same touch-sensitive knobs up top. They're rubber-coated this time. They kind of remind me of the Electron knobs, the performance knobs they added to the later series. They're easy to grip. You're not going to have problems if your fingers are slippery. I know there was some concern about durability there, but I gigged with my Electrons for years, and they went through all kinds of abuse, and those knobs held up fine. So I don't expect anything different here on the Push 2. And of course, we also have this fancy new color display. They say it's super high resolution. I think we're kind of spoiled with Apple devices, with iPads and Retina displays and iPhones, whatnot. It's not quite as crisp as that. It definitely reminds me a lot of the OP1. I know other reviewers have compared it to the OP1 as far as the graphics go, and that's a nice subtle touch too. But just the resolution, I mean, it's sharp, but it's not like Retina sharp. So just kind of giving you a heads up on that. Probably a step above Machine Studio for comparison. And of course, you have a nice one big display instead of split displays too. So speaking of that, let's kind of dive in a little closer. I'll show you some more hands-on, and then we'll come back for thoughts and wrap-up. Okay, so now we're kind of zoomed in closer on the actual controller itself, so you can kind of take a look at it as I talk. As you can see, like the display is nice and crisp. Like I said, it's not quite like a Retina display like you're used to, but it's super, super close. It's so much easier to find your way around on this. Like right now I know I'm in layout mode. I can go to my scales. You can choose your scales as usual. I've got note mode, which is handy. There we go. The colors of the display and the colors of the pad will automatically switch to change whatever your track colors are, your track headers and session view. So again, it's really simple to find your way around and know what you're looking for. We have a session view again as well. You can launch your scenes. It's good for quickly kind of sketching your song out, like a quick arrangement. Another nice touch now they just added is you can actually hold shift and press record. And doing that will actually trigger a range mode recording, so you can use this to actually play more linear parts in a range mode. You're not just stuck to session mode. There's still not quite as much control over navigation and things, but it's a start. The one thing I do kind of have some problems with is still kind of the browser. Here, let's go into here so I can show you what I'm talking about. Let's go back to no mode. So I've got like a drum kit here, and let's say that I want to load an open hi-hat on this pad here. You go into browse. You can see things are nice and laid out. They match your the typical library in the software itself, which is nice and convenient. There are still some issues though. Say we're gonna go to my drum hits here and go to hi-hats category. You can also use these arrow keys to navigate, which I find actually a little more convenient sometimes. But one of the downsides is, and there's also an auto preview, so you can hear your sounds as you preview, which is really nice. But in this case, like I said, I want to find an open hi-hat, and you know, I know that the open hi-hats are at the end of the list after the closed and medium hi-hats, so I have to hold this button to scroll over and keep holding it and keep holding it. Almost there. You get the idea. You know, if you have a folder with lots of different hits in it, it can take a while to actually scroll and find the things you need. You know, like I said, you can use the knobs here, and you can hold shift and use the knobs, but it's still not any faster than just holding these arrow buttons. There's no tagging in the browser, so you know all your hi-hats are in one sample, all your snares are in one folder, one location. If you have a user library with your own samples, that could be a problem. Of course, you could always organize them in separate folders if you wanted to, but again, you know, I'd love to see some kind of tagging added to the browser and live. It would just make it so much faster to find all these sounds. And I will point out that I do have a lot of live packs installed myself. That's why this folder's got so many samples in it. The standard install doesn't have that, so, but still something to be aware of. The browser's improved, but there's still some issues with it. Yeah, so I mean, this is great. You can actually open drum racks now quite easily and scroll to different drum channels. You can see the waveforms of the drums, and you can, you know, do things like edit it and set loop points, things like that. You can actually close drum racks now. Do that. One of the things I really like about this is if I kind of dive into this instrument rack a little more, something like say auto filter. They've actually used text in a really nice way. It makes it easy to spot each page and kind of see where you are within the synth. There's icons and things that help out too, different pages. All in all, like these sync icons. Let's see, AutoPan's got that. You can see the different filter types, frequency, beats, stuff like that. So all in all, I mean, there's these little touches that make it just so much easier to use, and it gives each synth and each page kind of like an identity, like I mentioned. And so yeah, I don't really feel like I'm ever lost in this. I know exactly I can find exactly what I need and navigate between, you know, note mode, session mode. If I'm in layout mode, trying to like do step sequencing, melodies, and things like that. It's really simple to do on this. You know, browsing is really easy for the most part. The mix view is great. You've got meters right now, right on the unit. And again, you can open like a drum rack and see the meters for the drum rack. Yeah, that's really well thought out, and I think it's a good improvement over push one. I just bonded with this so much easier than I did with the first one. So that's it. Let's kind of zoom out here, and we'll do a quick wrap up, and I'll tell you my thoughts on it overall. So yeah, push 2. I have to say I'm super impressed with it. I like the concept Ableton had with the first push. I think, you know, kind of focusing more on an instrument instead of like a do-it-all DAW controller was really a smart way to go to kind of give it more identity. And it, you know, it's a fun idea for actually being able to play a sequencer and take your audio and MIDI and just mangle it all kinds of ways in real time. Unfortunately, on push 1, I could never get in the groove with it that much. I mean, it wasn't complicated to figure out, but I still always felt like I was hunting around trying to find what I needed. The synth parameters weren't laid out, you know, as intuitively as I would have preferred. I mean, even just telling what mode you're in as far as like layout mode versus session mode and things like that, sometimes it wasn't as visibly clear as I would have hoped. Push 2 solves all of that. Like, it's so much easier to use. I can't even describe it. I've been writing music nonstop. I think in the last 4 days I've written 9 songs, and not just basic ideas for the most part, but like full arrangements and mix downs and everything. Just because it's so much fun to use Push now. The updates to Simpler 9.5 mean that for the first time I can actually mangle my audio files too. Since I work mostly with audio and not MIDI, that's just a huge bonus for me. But the whole workflow itself is just really fluid. It's really smooth. As I showed you earlier, the different parameters, a certain sense. There's just subtle, icons and things that Ableton uses to kind of give each page an identity, so to speak. So it's really easy to find your way around and to find what you're looking for. You never feel lost as what screen am I on? What am I trying to do? It's still not perfect. I think the browsing, especially for me, is an issue that I wish they would really improve, and that has more to do with, I think, live than it does with Push 2. But as far as actually like making Ableton fun to play again, like it's amazing. Like I think this is, I've put my Machine Studio back in the box for a while. I really want to focus on this. I've been kind of fried on live the last few years just because I've used it so much over 14, 13 years now. And for the first time in a long time, I'm actually having a blast playing with it. Use the controller to sketch your ideas out, the super playable pads, and then when you're done with the basic ideas, all your parts are kind of sequenced. Then you can set it to the side or whatever, switch to the mouse and do your arranging and your complex mixing and editing and things. And as far as the workflow goes, I mean, it's just great from starting an idea to finishing a song. So much faster now. So really, really impressed with it. I can't wait to see what they do with the software coming up. The next couple of years. I imagine we'll have this to play with for quite a while here. So yeah, that's it. It's a great controller. If you're a Push One user who uses it all the time and you really enjoy using Push One as part of your workflow, I think you'll have no hesitations about upgrading to Push 2. It makes it that much better. If you've liked the Push concept but just didn't really gel with it for some reason, I think again it's worth looking into. If you just use Push once in a while, it's not something you use all the time. I mean, there's no reason you have to upgrade to version 2 if you don't need to. Ableton's already said they're going to support Push 1, and there's already quite a few features from Push 2 that you can access on Push 1, although not everything. So yeah, I mean, I can't recommend enough. I think it's great. If you're an Ableton user and you're looking to kind of reinvigorate your workflow and your music writing, certainly I think it's something you should try out. If you have any questions, let me know. You can put them in the comments or send me an email, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks.